A young American woman, the Huntress, has been on the lookout for a particular Nazi officer who used to be a guard at the Auschwitz camp. When she finally tracks him down with the help of an anonymous fellow hunter, she goes all the way from Los Angeles to the English countryside to get her revenge. One day, the Huntress meets an elderly woman, Amelia Kaminska, over drinks. When she shows the woman a photograph of a young man in a Nazi uniform, they discuss how a coincidental conversation with another hunter on the dark web resulted in their search of over 6 decades to finally reach its conclusion. Amelia warns the Huntress to stay true to her objective and never forget that this guy was responsible for his psychopathic and monstrous ways. After all, she had to know that finding a Nazi from the past who hadn't yet met his creator was nothing short of a miracle. The Huntress then travels to London and by evening checks herself into a shabby-looking inn that housed the local pub. She sets out early the next morning, and when she gets to her destination farm, she fakes an ankle injury. This causes a change in the initial hostile behavior of the elderly owner and gets him to help her instead. Once inside his house, she tells him that her name was Lucy, and he introduces himself as Terry. Upon inspecting her ankle, he even offers to go to the pub to catch Dr. Wilson before he was done for the day. Before leaving, Terry makes a cup of hot chocolate for Lucy, and unknown to her, he spikes it with something to knock her out. While Terry socializes at the pub, Lucy loses consciousness. Terry meets another guy, John, who promises to get him some chicken soup the next day. When he gets back home later that night, he goes through her bag and sniffs her clothes while watching her sleep off the effects of the spiked hot chocolate. Lucy wakes up the next morning to see Terry making breakfast for both of them. She then offers to make the coffee. Exchanging family stories, Terry tells her that he was from New York and shifted to the farm when he took it over from his wife's family. While he speaks about how he lost his wife because she ended her own life, Lucy spikes his coffee in the kitchen. Giving him the coffee, she asks if he met Dr. Wilson as he had promised. Lying that he had met him, he informs her that he will be coming around to check on her during the day. He then asks if she would like to freshen up while she waited for the doctor. Having his coffee, he says that he'll look for some towels she could use. While Lucy has her bath, Terry gets busy with his daily work around the farm. He eventually collapses in the barn as a result of the coffee Lucy gave him. Just then, John reaches the farm and looks everywhere for Terry, but is unable to find him. All this time, Lucy manages to remain silently hidden. Terry wakes up to find that Lucy has taken him hostage and that he was tied up. She tells him she used the same remedy on him that he had used on her the earlier night. She also informs him that she knows how Terry had watched her sleep as she was only pretending to be knocked out since he had given her only a tiny dose. When she leaves him alone for a while, Terry takes his chance to desperately call out for help despite knowing well that the farm was isolated from other dwellings of the town. Lucy comes rushing back to stuff a piece of cloth in his mouth to prevent him from more yelling, as she was worried there was still a chance that passers-by on the hiking trail might hear him. Later, when he asks what it was that she wanted, she assures him that she wasn't there to rob him. She attempts to get him to be honest about his origins not being in New York by commenting on how gloomy the weather was in England. Not taking the bait, Terry asks her when she would untie her. She says she would consider untying him after she found the truth she was looking for. Leaving Terry unattended again while he keeps calling out for help, Lucy ransacks his home in search of something. She goes through every cupboard, shelf, and drawer, and finally comes upon a copy of the Holy Bible that was actually a lockbox. When she goes back to Terry and asks him the combination for its lock, he refuses to tell her and says that it has his wife's jewelry in it. Since he wasn't willing to part with some of the last memories he had of his wife, he tells Lucy that she can steal whatever she wants from the house instead, and that there was even some money in his room. Insisting that she didn't intend to rob him, she says that she has enough patience to go through all combinations of the lockbox to figure it out. Irritated with her, Terry states that whatever Lucy was doing to find the apparent truth was something that normal people didn't do, and that he was sure she had caught the wrong man since he just couldn't be who she was looking for. After trying out a couple of extremely obvious combinations that don't work, Lucy takes up Terry's suggestion of talking things out. She calls Amelia and switches the speakerphone on for Terry. Getting straight to business, Amelia introduces herself and asks Terry his name. When he presents his name as Terrence Hendricks, Amelia corrects it for him and states that he was Rudolf Tannhäuser, who used to be a guard at Auschwitz. This is when he finally begins to realize what the whole situation was about. Amelia accuses Rudolf of being responsible for the ends of several innocent lives, but he continues to insist that the women were directing their anger at the wrong man. He exclaims that if he was untied, he would somehow be able to prove that he was indeed Terry. Having gathered all his strength, He then suddenly frees his hands and opens the lockbox to retrieve his firearm from within. But quick to react with the advantage of age on her side, the huntress is able to knock him down before he caused any damage. Amelia then thinks back to when she told the huntress about Rudolf Tannhäuser and his deeds for the first time. As it turns out, he had managed to flee the camp a couple of days before its liberation. Amelia had also told the huntress about the marked difference between a large number of accused Nazi officers and a comparatively small number of life sentences given out. It was heartbreaking that even though these trials took a long time, the results would always be thoroughly underwhelming. Looking at Rudolf's photograph, the huntress was able to deduce that he was the one responsible for the deaths of Amelia's parents. Amelia adds that he was also responsible for her little sister's death as well, who was just about half a year old when the family first got to Auschwitz. Reliving the sheer nightmare of that first day, Amelia told the huntress that she was carrying a suitcase that held her sister, Hannah, as the family had wanted to stick together. But Hannah was discovered when she started to cry, and the Nazi guard on duty smashed her against the wall till she stopped crying forever. The guard had then cut off the tongue of Amelia's mother and the ears of her father. That was the day Amelia met Ingeborg, whom the huntress would know as her grandmother in the future. The two girls were merely 5 years old then, but were each other's biggest supports through their time at Auschwitz and were united against the Nazi guard, Rudolf Tannhäuser, whom they considered responsible for all the horrors at the camp. Back at the farm, Rudolf returns to consciousness and notices that he has been tied up again. He calls out for help immediately, and it only summons the huntress. She inspects the contents of the opened lockbox and asks Rudolf if his wife ended her life when she found out the truth about him. Despite his insistence that he loved his wife dearly, she continues to mock him and attempts to instigate him by saying that she was just another innocent life that was lost because of him. To add more fuel to the fire, she even asks if he still felt as godly as he did back at Auschwitz. She tells him that another Nazi guard that she hunted had insisted that they were only following orders, and asks Rudolf how someone could just blindly follow orders of such brutalities. Instead, all of them had to have been evil to have so easily done what was asked of them. She then gags Rudolf and goes outside to greet a newcomer. The farm's visitor turns out to be the local policeman Michael Grantham, who had come to look for Terry. When he asks who she was, the huntress says her name was Emma and that she was Terry's niece. Michael says that he noticed that the inspection for Terry's car was pending and that he just wanted to let him know not to use the car till it was done. Emma promises to let her uncle know about it when he was back. Michael then gets in his car to leave but continues to seem suspicious. Back inside the house, she places a canister of Zyklon B in front of Rudolf and asks if he knew who Jimmy Lee Gray was. When he doesn't answer, she tells him that he was a monster exactly like him who was executed by being gassed. The huntress proceeds to put on a gas mask and releases the canister open. She calls Amelia and Rudolf and then begs for mercy. Elsewhere, Michael meets John and asks if he has seen Terry around. He says that he was looking for him because he had recently inappropriately exposed himself to Michael's teenage daughter and that he would like to end him for his behavior. At Rudolf's house, the huntress removes her gas mask and states that she wasn't like him. She gets him outside with her gun pointing at him all the time. At some distance from the house, she tells him that he had to finish himself when she handed over the gun to him. Once she gets him on his knees, she gives him the gun. Rudolf then says that he remembered Amelia because she looked guilty for hiding a secret in her suitcase on the day she got to camp. Like the monster he was, Rudolf laughs while telling her how he stopped the crying child, its screaming mother, and the poor father. He says that the children weren't their enemy, but it was the dirty blood in them that they were asked to stop. Suddenly, he sees a fog of gas everywhere, and the huntress is back to wearing her gas mask. Rudolf asks if her name was even Lucy. Declaring herself the huntress of Auschwitz, she says that Rudolf's life belonged to the countless Jews that lost their lives in the Holocaust. Rudolf realizes that he had hallucinated being outdoors, and that he was actually at home the whole time with the gas rising all around him. He soon breathes his last. Satisfied about the latest hunt of the huntress, Amelia is at peace, and so is the huntress herself. When she goes outside for some fresh air, John joins her and aims his rifle at her. She looks at him and simply smiles. As it turns out, he was the anonymous hunter who helped in tracking Rudolf. Without revealing their identities to each other, he promises to guard her secret. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more exciting videos. Cheers!